welcome you to our week number 2 class for our general course. And we have some congratulations to a few folks in our class that took one of my general classes, went and took the test and passed. We have 3 of you, I believe. Brian, Denise, and Bob all passed their general this last Saturday, so congratulations to you. And I agree with, who was it saying they should be coming up here and teaching? So I like that.
Wasn't me.
So anyway, not you. All right. Well, anyway, hope we're glad that you were able to pass that, and we're glad you're at the class. All right. So tonight we're going to start talking about making contacts. Okay. So there's a couple of different ways that we're going to do that, but first let me introduce my wife. This is Penny. She was not with us last week. She was out, as I mentioned last week.
So that's why you talked about her all night.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
And yeah.
And we got
noticed
things
the
to
video?
tell you.
Yeah. How did you get the audio deleted?
Maybe
You
that's
don't
why.
even post it online yet.
It cost me a pretty penny to get that out.
He was missing you.
And she,
Yeah,
and she
oh.
she was actually looking for it. So
Yeah,
it's
you
like-
told me about it, so I tried.
anyway, we're glad that she could be here. And let's just go around real quick, just so we can see who all is here. Let's start with Kyle.
Hi, Kyle's here.
All right, Kyle's there.
Brian's here.
Brian's here.
Bill's here.
Bill's here.
Yvette's here.
Yvette.
Tony.
Tony.
Bob.
Denise.
Howard. Chris.
Tom.
Tom. Chad's in the back. Jim's in the back. Bill's in the back. So we're thankful y'all could be here. And so anyway, as I mentioned, we're going to start talking about contacts. And before we do, any questions from what we had last week? Must have been either everybody was all asleep or it was okay. So anyway.
You don't want to have to review the whole thing, do you?
Okay. Talk to me afterward, Howard, and we can review it. All right, so we're going to talk about contacts. One of the things we do is we make contact with other people in our hands. One of the things that I personally like to do is I like to do what's called parks on the air. Okay? Someone goes to a state park, a national park, and they try to make as many contacts as they can on the HF bands. Okay? You can even do it on VHF, UHF, if you can get the connections, but it's usually on the HF bands. I got home last night from Maryland, and I had today off because I was planning on coming back today. And so I thought, it's a beautiful day, the sun's shining. How many days do we get sunshine and beautiful blue skies like we had today? So I said, okay, I'm going to run up to a couple of parks. There's one, Crane Meadows, it's a wildlife area up by Little Falls, and then Charles Lindbergh Park up there. So I ran up there just to see how many contacts I can make by just putting a ham stick on top of the car. And this is what I did out of Crane Meadows. I made 55 contacts in under an hour. Okay? That ham stick was working very well. Okay? But you can see what you can do. I mean, coast to coast, right? Making contacts with all these people. And the things that we were sharing was what our signal strength was, where we were, and that's about it. What our call sign was. That was the QSO, not a long QSO. That's one thing about making contacts. It can be as short or as long as you want.
Was that your mobile?
That was, no.
Oh, that's
Kind of, yeah, kind of no. It was my 991 Alpha, which is my regular rig that I use in the shack, okay, which I took along with me. My antenna was a ham stick that I borrowed from Randy and just put on a mag mount on top of my car, and the car became the ground plane. And I sat in the car and did it because it's too cold outside, okay? But yeah, so I did that, and then I went over to Charles Lindbergh. same amount of time. And get it up here. I made 23 contacts versus 55. Okay? Same amount of time, same exact setup. Charles Lindbergh is 5 miles away from Crane Meadows. What was the difference? Any idea? What would the difference have been?
Elevation.
Could have been. Anybody else have any idea? Time of day? Okay. It was about 15, 20 minutes later. So, trees. There were no trees at Crane Meadow. I had open sky. Okay? Completely open sky. Over at Lindbergh, you're surrounded by trees. Now that can impact you on some cases. The other day, as I was driving out to Maryland, I stopped at a park in West Virginia. And I thought, oh, this is going to be great because the road was taking me up to the top of a ridge. I'm thinking, man, I can see everywhere from up here. I can see miles. And then the sign said, park this way. And it went down on this little dirt road. And I'm going back and forth down. By the time I get to the park, I'm looking around and I got a mountain there. I got a mountain there. I got a mountain there. And I got a mountain there. And I'm in the bottom. Okay? So I'm down, and I guess they call it the hollers or whatever they call it in West Virginia. But I was down in the bottom. Now I'm thinking, I will never get a signal out of this place. I put the same setup that I had today on, and I think I made 20 contacts in half hour. Not too bad, not too bad. And all the signal strength that I was getting back was what they call 5.9, which is solid signal, solid readability. Okay? Real good signal. That's the best signal you can get. And it was 5.9 from all over the place. So it just depends. Conditions. So that's just kind of an example of how things can change. And they can change quickly, and it's based upon where you're at and what's going on. So anyway, let's get on with contacts. Okay. All right, so making contacts. So, very rarely will you hear anybody call CQ on VHF, UHF. It's usually not the way you make a contact on VHF, UHF. Normally, what you do in order to make a contact on the VHF, UHF bands is just to put your call sign out there. N0JFY. Not even phonetically, just N0JFY. And someone will usually come back to you. I put that call sign out there, Kyle will come back to me. Okay? And Kyle puts his call sign out there, and somebody comes back to Kyle. That's all that's needed. On HF, you're going to hear a lot more people calling CQ. And what does CQ mean? Anybody have any idea? What does CQ mean? Okay, Bill just read it.
I can't remember.
Okay.
Calling in is
Calling any station, right? You're saying, hey, I'm looking for anybody out there to call me, anybody to contact me. Okay, so I'm going to call CQ. And I'm going to go CQ, CQ, CQ. Usually 3 times. And I'm going to go CQ, CQ, CQ. This is November 0 Juliet Foxtrot Yankee. I will do it phonetically so that they can understand me. Okay? If I were to just go N0JFY, they'd have no idea who they're talking to. Okay? But you put it out there phonetically, there's a good chance of them hearing you, and they'll come back to you. So you wait for a response. And if you don't hear a response, you repeat CQ again. And you keep throwing it out there. This morning when I started, I was starting at Crane Meadows, and I started on 40 meters. And, 40 meters was kind of dead today. There wasn't a lot happening on it. And I thought, well, I'll just throw it out there anyway. We'll see what happens. And so I'm calling CQ, CQ, Parks on the Air. This is November 0 Juliet Foxtrot Yankee, calling CQ, Parks on the Air. And nobody came back to me. Finally, one guy came back to me from Michigan. Okay, great signal, but he was the only guy. 15 minutes, I had nothing. So I switch over to 20 meters and I got 54 contacts. Okay? So sometimes the bands are, you have to check the different bands. Because you might have a lot of activity on one, it might have good propagation. The others, maybe not so much. So you gotta check around and find out what's going on. I was testing the 40 meter antenna, and that's why I was trying to do 40 meters and see how it was gonna work. And the antenna worked great, because I could tell from the Michigan contact that I had. But, you know, I just wasn't getting there. So I had to keep throwing out CQ. After a while, I got tired of throwing out CQ, so I got home and I get onto YouTube. How do I program my radio to say CQ? It'll do it. You just push a button. You pre-record it, and you push a button, and it'll send it out for you.
With the call sign?
With the call sign. Yep, some radios will do that, and it saves you. You just have to push a button, then you wait for the contacts to come back. Just a hint. Okay. Now, if you're on CW, what you do is you go CQ, 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 DE, and you call without phonetics. Okay. In this case, I would not put my call out because I don't do CW. I'm no good at it. But Randy would, because he's real good at it. He would go CQ, 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 DE, WJ0L. And that's what he'd put out there, and somebody would come back to him. Okay? And DE stands for, anybody know? This is. Exactly. Okay. Okay. So variations on calling CQ. One of them is CQDX. So if you hear somebody calling CQDX, they are looking for a long distance contact. Okay? And most often, and Kyle, can you check the temperature on that thermostat up there?
Okay.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
68.
68? Okay.
Sing hot?
No, it seems a little cool to me, but that's just me.
Would you like me to turn it up?
It does seem a little bit cool.
Chad's got it. All right, so if you hear CQDX, it's somebody looking for a long distance contact. Usually somebody if you're hearing it, it's probably somebody in the States. And they're looking for somebody outside of the 48 contiguous states to make a contact with. So if I hear somebody calling CQDX, this is WA0OTO. I'll get it, Kyle. I can't get mine, but maybe I can get yours. So, you know, if I hear Kyle calling CQDX, and I say, hey, WA0OTO, this is November 0 Juliet Foxtrot Yankee. What's Kyle going to tell me?
You're not DX.
You're not DX, you're across town. Okay? So they're looking for somebody, you know, whether it be Spain, Italy, England, you know, Japan, you know, they're looking for somebody long distance. They're looking for certain reasons usually, and they're not looking for somebody local, being within the U.S. Now, there are times when you might hear a CQDX from somebody that's in Italy. Guess what? Jump on them.
How do you know? Yeah.
Their call sign.
And their accents.
And their accents. Sometimes. There's some accents that are on in the U.S., but usually you'll hear their accent and you'll hear their call sign. Their call sign will, if it's in, let's say it's in England, their call sign is going to start with an M, Mike. Okay, that's their call sign, what it's going to start with. If they're in France, it's going to start with an F. And Spain is P.
EA.
Yeah, I think you're right, EA. Okay, so it's really, you know, that's where it comes down to. We know that, you know, as we were talking, Bob, the U.S. are A, N, W, K. Those are the prefixes that you're going to hear within the U.S. So if it's got a prefix other than that, you can pretty much be convinced that it's somebody that's outside of the U.S. Okay?
So when you were up in Little Falls today, you were
Were you doing CQ, or were you doing the DX too, or not?
Nope, I wasn't doing DX.
Okay.
Usually when I'm doing parts on the air, I'm just going to do CQ parts on the air.
Okay.
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 Occasionally, I have had DX stations contact me on parts on the air.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've had contacts with, when I've been at a park, in fact, there was a different time up at Crane Meadows, I had contacts with Italy, Spain, and Portugal that day. And they were coming in just as strong as the guys down in Colorado. So, you just never know, it's a propagation, okay?
And another thing, sometimes they'll call CQDX West Coast or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Notice that?
Yep, sometimes they'll be looking for specific areas within the states that they might be looking for. Or CQ East Coast. So, yeah. And it,
Oh, I just wanted to ask, obviously, I've never done this. Okay, so, when you contact somebody in another country, do they identify their country when you talk to them, or?
yeah,
How does
usually.
it go?
Usually.
Okay, that's how you know. You
Yeah.
just take their word for it, whatever they say.
I'm not going to question them.
Oh.
They
okay.
tell me they're in Ukraine, I'm going to believe them.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And Kyle made a contact, was it today?
No, that's Friday.
On Friday. Where was that again?
The bands are awesome. So it's Italy, Moscow, England, a couple in Poland, Lithuania, and Serbia, all on sideband.
All on sideband. So he was making a lot of contacts on 10 meters because he's running within his tech sideband privileges and he's making those contacts, DX contacts. So, all right. Okay. Now you've heard of contests. I don't know if we mentioned a little bit last week. There's contests that go on usually every week. Usually every weekend, there's some kind of a contest going on. Fills up the bands. It's irritating sometimes, but people are trying to make as many contacts as they can. And so what they're going to say is they're going to say CQ contest, okay, or CQ test, or CQ from special event stations, so that you know what they're looking for and what they're involved in. Okay. Okay. So people might be calling for CQ to contact people that are in, as Kyle mentioned, might be in North America, okay? North America, or CQ California. I mean, if I'm looking to get working all states, right? I want to work every state in the union. I might call CQ Alaska, CQ Alaska. That's one I still don't have. Okay? Not a lot of hams in Alaska. But, so I might be calling CQ Alaska in order to make a contact in Alaska. Okay? So you might hear that as you're on the air. Okay. Now, let's say you hear a QSO going on out there and it sounds pretty interesting and you want to join in. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? There is nothing wrong with joining in on a QSO. But how do you do it? Anybody have any idea how you would join in on a QSO?
Throw out your call sign.
Throw out your call sign. You betcha. You betcha. Let's see if that's the first one. Okay, join in a QSO, which is also known as breaking in. Okay, you're breaking into a QSO, and it is common. On the phone, on phone voice, just say your call sign. So, Chad and I are having a QSO, and we're talking about the weather. We're saying how cold it is, and you want to tell us how hot it is, and you're going to break in. So, Howard's going to break in. How are you going to do it?
Call sign.
Put your call sign out there. You bet. And you know what Chad and I are going to do? We're going to ignore him, right, Chad? No, we won't. No. We will recognize you. And we will break and say, Howard, welcome. And what's on your mind? And we'll talk. And it becomes a three-way conversation. It can become a four-way conversation. And You know, it's all good. It's all good. It just expands those that are able to talk and that are. But you just throw out your call sign. Now, if you're on CW or digital mode, you send a BK. BK for break, followed by your call sign. Okay? So all you CWers out there, that's what you would do. Okay, and the same rules apply during contests and competitive events. Okay? There's no different rules for breaking in. It's the same thing. Okay, logging contacts. What do I mean by logging contacts?
Keeping a log.
Keeping a log. Keeping a log that has information, right? Yeah. Okay. It used to be that it was a requirement of the FCC to keep a log. Okay? It's no longer required of the FCC, but it is a very good idea to keep a log of your contacts. Most amateurs keep a log to verify contacts for awards and to record items of interest. Okay? There's a note below. We'll look at it. The typical log would include time, date, the frequency or band that you're on, the mode of contact, whether it's upper sideband, PSK, FT8, etc. It's going to include your call sign. It's going to include the signal report. How good's their signal? How good's your signal? You're going to record that. Names. You know, it's Bill and me. Okay. Put our names out there, and the equipment that is used. Occasionally, I don't include the equipment that I'm using, but sometimes folks ask, "What equipment are you using?" And we share that. Okay. So that's a typical log, and it can be useful in providing info if it's ever requested by the FCC. If the FCC comes back and say, "We hear you made a contact on such and such a time. Who was that with? What can you tell me about it?" Well, if you've logged it, you can go back to that log, and that helps you in responding to the FCC. And that would be the reason why you would really want to keep it. Now here's the note, okay? If you operate on 60 meters and you're using anything for an antenna besides a dipole, okay? Anything besides a dipole, the FCC requires you keep a record of the antenna gain, calculations, or the manufacturer's data to ensure that you meet the 100-watt ERP restrictions, okay? That's on 60 meters. Kyle.
That makes me wonder what is near that you're so restrictive on that band.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Why is 60 restricted?
It's like they require that, and
Well, according to what I've read, it's
I
a,
guess like
it's like a
one-
government band, and there's only 5 stations you're allowed to use,
yeah.
and so it's.
Yeah, so 60
Yeah.
meter is the only HF band that has channels.
Yeah.
And you're required to be within one
Yeah,
of those
channels.
channels. Okay. So there's a lot of requirements with 60 meters. So, but just in red, you might just take note of that just in case.
So
It
in
might,
other words, I should take another picture with the red included.
Well, that's the question on the test, too. Could be.
could be.
Yeah.
It definitely could be. All right. Okay, so we're out there talking on the radio, and I guarantee you on the HF band you're going to run into interference. It's just going to happen. There's things that it's going to occur. The frequencies aren't channelized. There are many amateur radio users using those frequencies, and there can be crowding, there can be propagation problems, personal choice, atmospheric conditions, and consumer electronics. All this stuff can create interference. Okay? Today, when I was starting up, I'm getting onto 20 meters, and I'm spinning the dial, right? I'm listening to the different frequencies. I'm trying to find a clear one. And then I'm going, man, there's no clear frequencies out here. And I'm spinning and I stop, and what do you do to make sure you got a clear frequency? What we talked about last week? Listen. So I was listening. I listened for a good 30 seconds and I heard absolutely nothing. And so I go out and I put out there, is this frequency in use? Is this frequency in use? This is November 0, Juliet Foxtrot Yankee. Is this frequency in use? As soon as I put that out there, I get a call back. Yes, this frequency is in use. I'm setting up a POTA. What should I do? Say, I didn't hear you. I'm here first.
Move to another frequency.
I move to another frequency. And that's what I said. I come back and it says, thank you. I will move to a different frequency. And he thanked me, and we went on our way. And I went and I finally found one. And you keep looking, you'll find one. It can be hard because of the interference, okay? It can be challenging, but it's a good challenge. You feel good once you get over it. Okay, so learning how to make contacts under these conditions is part of becoming a good operator. Okay? When it gets tough and you've got a lot of interference out there, it really teaches you how to become a good operator. I've heard, and I heard it today, and it drove me nuts, and I could have got upset. I didn't. But there was somebody out there that decided that POTA is just not the thing to happen. And there's some guys out there that feel that way, and they'll find a POTA station and they'll go to that frequency and they'll start tuning up. Drives me nuts when they do it.
Oh, I've seen that before.
They
They'll
do.
go just a bit off so the tune is right in the middle.
Yep.
So it doesn't blank out.
Yep. And so it's irritating. It's interference, and we'll talk about what kind of interference that is in a minute. But
Or they'll sit there and whistle.
or they'll sit there and whistle. Yep. They'll do that, and it's just. We'll talk about what kind that is, because it's not right. They are wrong. But a good operator, as you all will be, you will be patient. If you're patient and you continue doing your POTA or whatever QSO you're trying to do, they're going to eventually get tired and they're going to go away. Okay? But if they get you to stop, guess what? They'll keep doing it. Okay, so the types of interference. Harmful interference, which is defined by the FCC as interference which seriously degrades, obstructs, or repeatedly interrupts a radio communication service operating in accordance with radio regulations. Now, it's not always illegal. You know, it can be done inadvertently, okay, but it can still be harmful. But it needs to be resolved to keep communicating. Now, another type is malicious, deliberate, or willful. Now, this is specifically forbidden by FCC 97.101D. Okay? So these guys that are willfully tuning up, willfully whistling into the mic, they are breaking the law. Okay, so how do we avoid it? How do we avoid the interference? Learn what bands are crowded and when. There are certain times that certain bands are crowded. There are certain times that other bands are open and not as crowded. There are some bands that are fun to get on and to rag chew, okay? Because they're not as crowded. 15 meters is one of those. 17 meters is another one. 10 meters. Lately it's been pretty busy, but often it's pretty open. Okay. 20 meters during the day, some days can be very busy. On weekends it can be extremely busy. Learn the characteristics of each band, propagation and noise. You know, in the morning, 20 meters. It's a great band during the day, but it doesn't really open up all that early. It's based on when the sun is coming up, okay? And so that's what opens that band up, is during the day. And so later in the morning and into the afternoon, 20 meters here is really good. First thing in the morning, not so good, okay? You can make some contacts, but it's not as good. So you need to learn when the band conditions are propagating and when there's noise on them. 40 meters later today, my noise floor was through the roof, and I was beginning to wonder if it was my radio, which it might have been. So, but you need to play with that and figure it out. Okay, learn how to use your equipment. Understand its strengths and its weaknesses. Okay, some radios have the ability to filter out some of that noise. Okay, I've got some filters on my radio that I'm just learning how to use, that they can really filter out the noise, and I can pick up those weaker signals, and I can hear them. But if I turn those filters off, I can't hear anything. Okay, you want to check published calendars for major operating events. When is that contest is going to happen? You know, is it a big contest? If it's a big one, you're going to have a lot of people out there. There's going to be a lot of interference. But you can still operate. You just have to be careful. Okay, so how do we react to interference? Be flexible. No one has claim to any frequency, so be flexible. Have a backup plan, especially for scheduled events, and do this in advance. You know, the club will often operate on field day. Well, we do. We operate on field day in June. Okay, so plan on that. Come on down, have some fun. We operated this year on winter field day. We might have a special event. We're talking about doing a special event station. And if we have a special event station around how old this club is, it's over 106 years old. So it's getting there. You know, we're just, you know, young fellers, but, you know, we're getting old. There's nobody in the club that was around when it was originated. Let's put it that way. But we'll do a special event station, and we can't really say, okay, we're going to use this. We can say we're going to try to use 20 meters on this frequency, but we don't have absolute right to that frequency. So if somebody else is on it, we may have to change our plan and use some other frequency. So you would want to put contingency plans out there and backup plans. And do it in advance, not the day of. Okay, keep a cool head, and don't allow harmful interference to turn into deliberate interference. Okay, so if I get someone like this guy that's tuning up, and I'm just getting ticked at him, so I turn over and I start tuning up. You know, is that going to do anybody any good? No. No. So you want to keep a cool head, okay? You don't want to get upset. It's just radio. We're just playing radio, right? We don't want to get upset. So we keep a cool head. Okay, here we go. Here's the interim test. Okay. Which of the following is required by the FCC rules when operating in 60 meters? Okay, if you're using an antenna other than a dipole, you must keep a record of the gain of your antenna.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. It is correct. All right. Here we go. What is the recommended way to break into a phone contact? Say
B.
QRZ.
B. Say your call.
Say your call sign once. Teacher, no answers. And it is B. Okay, generally, who should respond to a station in the contiguous 48 states who calls CQDX?
C.
Yep.
Any stations outside of the lower 48 states. Correct. All right. Did I miss one? No. Okay. What is the voluntary band plan restriction for U.S. stations transmitting within the 48 contiguous states in the 50.1 to 50.125 megahertz band segment? Only contacts with stations not within the 48 contiguous
A.
states.
Yes.
Teacher, no answers.
Oh.
Only contacts with other stations within the 48 contiguous states. Only digital contacts and only single or slow scan TV. Any thoughts other than that one?
A.
A. Okay. All right. Which of the following is a good way to indicate on a clear frequency in the HF phone bands that you are looking for a contact with any station? Sign your call sign once, followed by the words listening for a call. If no answer, change frequency and repeat. Say QTC, followed by this is your call. If no answer, change frequencies and repeat. Repeat CQ a few times, followed by this is, then your call sign a few times, then pause to listen. Repeat as necessary.
C.
All right. Yeah, and you don't want to transmit an unmodulated carrier for 10 seconds, followed by this is. Okay. Good. C. All right, what is a reason? What is a reason why many amateurs keep a station log? The ITU requires a log of all international contacts. The ITU requires a log of all international third-party traffic. The log provides evidence of operation needed to renew a license without a retest
And D delta.
to help with a reply if the FCC requests information.
That's it?
That is it, yes. Good, good. Which of the following is required when participating in a contest on HF frequencies? Submit a log to the contest sponsor. Send a QSL card to stations worked or QSL via Logbook of the World. Identify your station per normal FCC regulations.
That's it?
C.
Or all of the above.
No.
No,
It's not
okay.
all of the above.
It's not all of the above. It is C. You are correct. Okay. So, modes. We're going to talk about modes here. There's lots of different modes that we can work with. One of them is CW, which stands for continuous wave. And it's found in the lower ranges of each HF band. However, CW can be transmitted anywhere within HF. Okay? But for the best things and what word am I looking for? Considerate. To be considerate, you operate in the lower ranges of the HF bands. AM and single sideband. There's other modes. Single sideband is the most common voice mode or phone signal. And it has displaced AM as the preferred HF voice modulation method. Any idea why?
Takes up less bandwidth.
Okay. Yeah.
What did you say?
Takes less bandwidth,
Oh, there's the
which is exactly it. Single sideband signals use less spectrum space than AM, 3 kilohertz versus 6 kilohertz. And this increases in efficiency, resulting in single sideband having a greater range than AM. Good answer.
I was reading.
Okay, upper sideband versus lower sideband. So it's good amateur practice to use upper sideband above 9 megahertz, 20 meters through 10 meters, and lower sideband elsewhere except on 60 meters. Okay, upper sideband is used on VHF and UHF. FM is generally not used on HF because higher noise hurts intelligibility. There's an exception to this. FM repeaters can be found on the higher frequencies of 10 meters, above 29 megahertz, where cross-continent and DX contacts can be made when the band is open. Okay? So in 10 meters, you know, there can be some FM repeater work that's done. I've heard some nets on 10 meters up in those areas. There's a couple of them. There's one I heard in New York, and I think there's another one out west somewhere.
There is another around here.
I haven't heard of any around here, but
I've seen some POTA spots on FM.
you've seen some POTA ones out there too. Okay.
I
Yeah.
can hear them now.
Yeah.
I couldn't transmit either.
Yeah. It depends on what they're using. Okay, so modes continued. Digital voice. This is kind of a new one. Digital voice on HF. The operator's voice is converted to and from a digital stream via a modem or a sound card. And modem connects to a regular single sideband transceiver. Okay. Digital voice is kind of new on the HF side. The fidelity compared to single sideband, it's comparable to single sideband, but it's less affected by fading. So you listening to a single sideband, you can hear the voice kind of up and down, you know, fades in, comes up a little stronger, then kind of fades out. And that happens, you know, because of propagation. The propagation is changing, and so it kind of fades. So I haven't tried the digital voice on HF. Something that I will have to look into. I have not done that, but it's an interesting thing to look for. Okay, so the most popular digital voice modes are free DV and protocol developed by G4GUO, Charles Brain. I bet he's a brainiac. But free DV, I've heard of it, and I was going to go out and check out their site, but I did not. So I'll have to do that. Okay, modes continue. Digital modes. Packet radio on VHF and UHF to exchange digital data, but it's also common on HF. FT8 seems to be the most popular digital mode at the present time. So there's some other ones, FT8, PSK63, PSK31. These are effective at low power levels and are widely used. Kyle, you've used FT8. What can you tell us about it?
It's boring.
It's boring. Okay. The computer talking to computer.
Is this basically text messaging?
FT8 is not. It just exchanges signal reports and then you go to the next person. But computer to computer.
Yeah, computer signal report.
Oh, just signal returns.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. There are other digital modes that are like texting.
PSK31 is like
Yep.
you can type in and it'll type on their screen in real time. You can backspace and everything.
Yeah. So, yep, there are some that are just like texting. Good question. RIDI is the oldest and it's still common, radio teletype. I haven't done RIDI, but there are a lot of people that do. So that's another digital mode. And there's Packdoor and Winmore, and these are used for semi-automatic and automatic messaging for small files, WinLink type thing. Imaging modes. Imaging mode transmissions on HF encode photos and graphics to tones. The tones are reconstructed as an image on a display. And image modes are allowed on same frequencies as voice except for 60 meters. 60 meters is very restricted. Most common images are slow scan television, called slow because each image takes several seconds. Chad, you ever work with SSTV? What?
A little bit, yeah.
Little bit. What's it like?
Slow.
Slow?
Well, yeah, what do you mean? If you use a computer program and you load an image that's already on your computer, and then it connects like with an EasyDigi or a Signal Link or some kind of a sound card interface, and then it shows the image on the software. On your radio, you type in the frequency if it's FM or if it's HF single sideband, and when you hit start, it does these crazy tones. It goes do-do-do-do-do, and then it starts scanning. You see the bar moving down the image slowly, and the other station then will decode that into your picture as it comes across.
Ah, okay.
If the signal is strong, the picture will look good. If you're on HF and the band's going up and down, you'll see where the picture kind of fades in and out, and you might skew to the left or right a little bit. It works really good over FM or really good over HF if you have strong signals. Anyone can decode it, even if you're not a ham. You can hook your computer with the software from the audio output of your radio to the microphone on your computer, and you can wait for one to start and it'll automatically find the right mode the different modes in there, Scotty, Alien, all these different weird names, and it'll start decoding it. A fun one to do is when the International Space Station goes overhead, you can even use a scanner that's on the 2-meter band, normally in the 145.800 megahertz range. And if you have a directional antenna, you can try to follow it as it's moving across the sky, and then they'll send down pictures of the crew or experiments that they're working on, and that's kind of neat because you're actually decoding it directly from them.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And there's also fast scan amateur television, which allows for full motion video, and it's restricted to 432 megahertz and higher frequency bands due to wide bandwidth. Okay. Okay. Mode comparison. Okay. So this chart just kind of gives some of the comparisons between the modes that we've kind of talked about. Okay. CW has a bandwidth up to 150 hertz. AM 6 kilohertz, single sideband 3 kilohertz. HF digital up to 500 hertz. Wideband HF digital up to 2.3 kilohertz. Hactor Winmore, this is your FT8s up here in the narrow bandwidth. And up to 100 words per minute. CW is up to 60 words a minute. And yeah, just some comparisons here. We'll get more details in chapter 5 and 6 when we get there. Okay, HF receiving. On VHF, FM receivers have 3 basic controls: frequency, squelch, and volume. Okay? Pretty straightforward, just 3 controls. Now, single sideband and CW receivers have additional controls to accommodate non-channelized continuous tuning operations. Must be able to receive signals in the presence of noise and interference from adjacent channels, for example. So you've got noise on these adjacent channels. Your receiver needs to be able to pull out the signal on the frequency that you're on. And your equipment needs to be able to do that. So selectivity, ability to discriminate between closely spaced signals. So if I'm operating on on 14.250 and somebody's operating on 14.252, they're fairly close. I want to make sure I'm getting the signal on 14.250 and I'm going to hear the noise a little bit, but I don't want to hear what they're saying. So your receiver needs to be able to tune into that. Okay?
How does electricity, like power lines, affect your ability?
You know, I remember as a kid driving around with my mom with an AM station,
Yeah.
and anytime you'd run under a
Yeah.
power line, you'd
Yeah.
get,
remember
and then you
that.
get away from the power line and it goes away.
Yeah.
Not quite an issue. But Jay has a comment.
I could just say this, that I have a HF radio in my truck. And if I put it on 10 meters, I can drive around town here and I can pick out every bad transformer in town. There's one I go by in Sartell, it sounds like Pfeiffer. And I get away from it. So the power company has transformers out there that are causing a lot of interference. But somebody has to call in and complain about it. So if you have that situation at your house, there are things you can do about it.
Yeah, but as long as the electrical grid is operating properly, you're not going to really have that issue.
Yeah, so my friend's dad is a ham of Aiken. He was telling me he had a bad transformer and power company wouldn't believe him. So he finally sent somebody out and he showed him on his radio and then they replaced it. The company had no idea.
They
It doesn't.
had to fix the one right over here. We complained and complained. I don't know if Chad's right here, but he's not paying attention. But they, when they came out and fixed this transformer right over here, you would call them a few times on it, hadn't you?
Right, because we had power flickering, is that what you're talking about?
Power flickering, but we got interference, noise.
Yeah, we did, because anytime you have arc units, kind of like a spark gap transmitter. It doesn't care what frequency it's like in.
Yep.
So it could be even a ground to that transformer that's causing the noise, but, yeah, so they're supposed to fix that stuff. It does affect it though.
Yep, if they've got some bad equipment, they will
Okay.
affect it. Good question, good question. So, in addition, there's sensitivity, the ability to detect a signal. If you've got a weak signal and a strong signal, you know, they're gonna be able to select that weak signal that's on your frequency versus that strong signal that might be 3 kilohertz away. So you want both of those, selectivity and sensitivity within your transceivers. Okay, signal reporting. This is usually what gets exchanged between the different operators in a QSO. Exchange your signals. You do it at the beginning of a contact. Not necessarily at the end, but at the beginning. That way they know, okay, Kyle, you're coming in at 5-1. Well, Kyle's going, man, how can I be coming in so bad? Oh, I need to tune my radio a little bit better. And it'll be coming in better. I was on a Parks on the Air QSO. I was just starting up. And I had selected a frequency, right? And I had the frequency. It was 14.191. And I put that into the website. I put that out so people could know where to come find me. And so I'm calling CQ, CQ, CQ. And I get some people coming back. And I had one guy that came back, and he was in Idaho, and he says, you know, Jeff, your signal just doesn't sound quite right. It sounds like you're a little bit off. He says, what frequency are you on? Well, I looked at my computer, because I'm looking at my computer. I'm on 14.191. Then I look over to my radio. And I was on 14.191.5. I had bumped the QFO knob, and I'd gone off frequency. And he was absolutely right. I was sounding lousy out there. People were still picking me up, but he came back and said, you're not sounding right. And I thank that guy for coming back and telling me that, because I could then make that adjustment and fix my radio. Okay? So that's why you kind of share signal reports at the beginning of a QSO. So that, you know, if I give Kyle a 5-1, or Kyle, you're not sounding quite right, Kyle can fix up his radio and he can sound right. More than likely, Kyle's going to come to me and say, Jeff, you sound horrible. And then I can work on mine and see if I can come back to Kyle. Okay? Okay, the most common exchange for signal reporting is RST, which stands for readability for the R, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best. Okay? So if I give Brian, you're a 5.5. You're that 5, that's great, right? That's the first one, readability. I'm reading Brian perfect. I can hear him. I'm reading him. I know what he's saying. Okay? Well, strength is the next one, S. And this is on a scale of 1 to 9, 9 being the best. So if I gave Brian a report of 5.5, okay, well, I'm reading him very well, but he's not as strong as other stations I might be hearing, okay? So if I had given him a 5.9, boy, he's coming in powerful. But if I gave him a 5.5, I can hear him, I can understand him, but it's just not all that strong, okay? Now if I give, Kyle, I gave him a 5.1, right? I can hear him, I can understand him, but I have to listen really hard to pull him out, okay, on a 5.1. Okay, so readability, strength. The next one is tone. It's also on a 1 to 9 scale, and this one is this one's only used for CW and digital mode contacts. Okay, it indicates the signal purity. So values less than 9 indicate some kind of transmitter problem. So I often hear Randy say, as he's doing CW, he says, the signals that I get are usually 599. Okay, 5NN. is what they give them, 599. And that's a great signal. He'll complain every once in a while, he says, they only gave me a 311 or something, and it didn't make sense. But that last number there is really for CW, okay? So as you guys get into CW, that will become more of a thing for you. There will be a CW class coming up again, just saying. Okay, now a C can be added after the RST, and this indicates an unstable signal or a chirp. Okay. I haven't heard that, but that can happen. Okay. Okay, here we go. Practice questions again. Which sideband is most commonly used for voice communications on frequencies of 14 megahertz or higher? Upper, lower, vestigial, yeah, that one, or double sideband.
Upper.
Okay, I'm hearing upper, okay. Yes, it is upper sideband, yes. Okay. Which of following modes is most commonly used for voice communications on the 160 meter, 75 meter, and 40 meter bands?
Lower.
Lower?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. And C and D. If you see C and D on a test, don't worry about them, okay? You're not going to run into vestigial sideband. It's probably something. I'm just not smart enough to know what it is exactly.
Oh, well, okay, I remember. Okay.
Penny remembers. What is it?
Vestigial sideband,
Yeah.
where it's all of one side and a little bit of the other.
Okay. It's all of one and a little bit of the other, and double
Yeah.
is the same on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. But mostly you're going to run into speaking as upper and lower sideband. Okay. Okay. Which of the following mode is commonly used for voice communications on 17 meter and 12 meter bands? 17 and 12.
I think it was upper.
Okay. You think it's upper? It's above 20, right? 20 and above, right? It is a upper A. Okay. Which mode of voice communication is the most commonly used on the HF amateur bands? Frequency modulation, double sideband, single sideband, or phase modulation? Single sideband. Yeah. Good. C. Okay. Which of the following is an advantage when using single sideband as compared to the other analog voice modes on the HF amateur bands? Very high fidelity voice modulation, less subject to interference from atmospheric static crashes, ease of tuning on receive and immunity to impulse noise, and less bandwidth used and greater power efficiency.
D.
Okay, I'm hearing D. And the answer is D. Yes. Which of the following statements is true of the single sideband voice mode? Only one sideband and the carrier are transmitted. The other sideband is suppressed. B. Only one sideband is transmitted. The other sideband and carrier are suppressed. Okay. And C, single sideband is only voice mode that is authorized on the 20 meter, 15 meter, and 10 meter amateur bands. No. And single sideband is only voice mode authorized on 160, 75, and 40. No. Okay. The answer is B. Correct. Let's try this again. I know how to turn the screen off now. Okay, the answer was B. Okay. Why do most amateur stations use lower sideband on the 160, 75, and 40 meter bands?
D.
D.
Okay, so you are right. It is D. That is correct. It is good amateur practice. And that's one of the things that we want to always make sure that we are doing is good amateur practice. And with that, I'm going to pass. Penny, if you could have this passed out.
Sure.
What Penny's going to be passing out here is the basically the considerate guide to using the bands. Different areas where certain things are located. And I usually have a copy of this sitting.
Yes. Oh, thank you for
I usually have a copy of this sitting right next to my band plan
Okay, and anyone else?
on my by my radio. I have both of them,
Plus this other one.
plus that other one.
Everybody?
Yep.
How many more do you have?
A couple of them. I have a couple of things sitting by the radio. Okay, so it's good amateur practice. All right, HF transmitting on phone. Okay. Putting transceiver into transmit mode is called keying the transmitter. The PTT, also known as push to talk, button works the same as on FM. Okay, you got an HF rig, you push the buttons, right? And that's how you get the signal to go out. Same on VHF, UHF, HF. Some HF operators use voice operated transmit or Vox. This allows for voice or for hands-free operation. Especially true if you're doing anything mobile. Sometimes you want to do this, okay? Put it in Vox so your hands free. I played around with it a little bit. It works. It also picks some other things up and it'll key your radio. So if I'm sitting down in my shack and I've got this thing on Vox and I've not been a good fella, and Penny comes downstairs and she said, "Jeff, what are you doing?" She doesn't do that, by the way. She doesn't. Okay. But guess what's going to go out on the radio? "Jeff, what are you doing?" That would not be a good thing, right? Wouldn't be a good thing for me, because you'd all know that I'm in trouble again. I got to go live in that doghouse. It's not heated and it's cold this time of year. Okay.
Without your radio.
What's that?
Without your radio.
Without my radio. Man, if I could have my radio in the doghouse,
You're right.
I'd be okay. Yeah.
Hey, you forget it's cold out.
I would forget it's cold out. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Just hang on to the antenna because that's warm.
Hang on to the antenna and ask Jay to come over and key up the mic. Right, Chad? All right. Transmitting on CW. CW operators use pro signs, which are basically two-letter shortcuts. For example, AR means end of message. They have a bunch of them, a bunch of these pro signs for CW. They respond to a CQ as at the, okay, now this is a key one. This is one you're going to want to remember. If you are transmitting on CW, you will want to respond to a CQ at the fastest speed that you're comfortable copying. Okay? So when you're listening to a CW signal, how fast are you comfortable in copying that down and writing it? Right now I'm about 1 word per hour. Okay?
You're talking Morse code?
Morse code. Yep. I am not comfortable, so I don't do it, but it's what you're comfortable at. And up to the speed of the sending station. So if you have a sending station that is sending at 5 words per minute, and your ability is that you can send at 30 words per minute, you only want to respond at 5 words per minute because that person's only going to be able to copy it. Okay. So that's what this is talking about. You go at the fastest speed that you're comfortable up to the speed of the sending person because you don't want to be faster than what they're comfortable. Okay? And you reply with QRS to request the sender to slow down, or QRQ to speed up. Now, as with voice, you give your call sign every 10 minutes and at the end of the contact. Okay. Still have to do. Yes,
You
Howard.
do that in Morse code or you do it in voice?
You do it in Morse code. Yep.
So you can't use voice at all then?
No. No. When you're doing CW,
CW?
yeah, CW, you it's all CW.
Pretty slow conversation.
For me, it would be a very slow conversation. Yeah. One day I'm going to learn CW. Ah, there we go. Okay, if you want more information on ProSigns, you can go to www.radiotelegraphy.net/ProSigns. That's HTM. Okay. All right. Additional CW information can be found at these locations. And now we get to practice. Okay. Which of the following statements is true of Vox operation versus PTT?
B.
Yeah, B.
B, allows for hands-free operation. Yes. Okay, which of the following describes full break-in telegraphy? QSK. Breaking stations send the Morse code ProSign BK. Automatic keyers instead of hand keyers are used to send Morse code. An operator must activate a manual send-receive switch before and after every transmission. And transmitting stations can receive between code characters and elements.
D.
D. Okay, it is D. Transmitting stations can receive between between code characters and elements when you're doing a full break-in.
You haven't done that, though, have you?
No, I haven't.
Right.
I haven't done
You
CW.
don't have, right, it's just the answer, right, okay.
What should you do if a CW station sends QRS?
That's gotta be A.
Send slower.
There.
There you go. Okay. What does it mean when a CW operator sends KN at the end of a transmission? Listening for novice stations, operating full break-in, listening for a specific station or stations,
Yep.
and stations closing the station now.
See,
See?
Senior.
All right. True. Okay, what did I just do?
You want
No, it
backwards?
said B.
I went backwards?
I think you did.
All right, this thing is, my computer's going,
Okay,
okay.
that's where.
There we are, now we'll go
So that-
forward.
Yeah, so that, like, KN be like for known, you know,
Yeah,
KNOWN, that's,
yep, listening for known stations, listening for specific station.
yeah.
Yep. Okay, what is the best speed to use when answering a CQ in Morse code?
The B.
B, yep, okay. So, how about A? The fastest speed at which you're comfortable copying. Yeah, I agree with that. But no slower than the CQ. Well, I can't do 30 minutes per minute, right? So, or 30 words per minute. So, yeah, that one's wrong. No faster than the CQ. Good. Answer B. What does the term zero beat mean in CW operation? Matching the speed of the transmitting station, operating split to avoid interference, sending without error, matching the transmit frequency to the frequency of the received signal.
D.
Okay, I'm hearing D. Any disagreements with that? Okay, it is D. Okay. What pro sign is sent to indicate the end of a formal message when using CW?
C, Charlie.
C Charlie, meaning AR, right?
That's my favorite
Yeah.
letters.
That's like,
Followed by.
that's like in French, au revoir. Yeah.
One over your finger.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, C Charlie. Yep. Okay. What does the Q signal QSL mean? Send slower. We have already confirmed by card. I acknowledge your receipt.
Yep.
We have worked before.
See,
C. Correct.
like successful.
Yep. Like successful. Yeah, okay.
The SL.
SS successful. Gotcha. What does the Q signal QRV mean? You are sending too fast. There's interference on the frequency. I am quitting for the day. I am ready to receive messages.
D.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a.
D.
D.
And
It's D.
it is D.
RV.
If you look at the RV for receive.
Yeah, it's like
Oh.
receive, yeah.
Oh.
I'm ready to receive.
Okay.
Good. Yep.
A's gotta be an answer to one of the questions. Process elimination.
You would think. What is the purpose of an electronic keyer? To automatically transmit, receive, switching, automatic generation of strings of dots and dashes for CW operation,
Yeah.
Vox operation,
B.
or computer information for PSK and RIDI.
B.
B. B is correct. Yep. All right. Pass this one. What's coming out now is a list of the Q codes and some of the major ones that get used. And I think you'll find that to be a
Oh,
You-
this is 2 pages.
useful thing. Is it 2 pages?
Well, if there's 2, well, wait a minute, there were 2,
Yeah,
okay.
there's
Okay, well, this, it only,
What did I do?
I don't know, that one
Yeah,
had a
stuff.
set, but anyway, but after that, it looks like it's all the same.
Yeah, it should be all the same.
Yeah, right, okay.
I was gonna print out one and then I decided to print out another one. That's what
Right,
happened.
oh, okay.
Okay, so this is just a list of the Q codes that you might be using, and it'll help as you hear these things. So
Keep that by your desk too.
I don't. I find I only use very few Q codes, but there's just a few of them on there that I use. There's a few that are,
See, there's the phonetic alphabet.
and there is the phonetic alphabet on there as well. That's why I printed that one out instead of the other one. Okay. So emergency operation. Amateurs should be familiar with emergency rules and procedures. And memorize all these things. I'm just kidding, okay? FCC 47 talks about operating during a disaster, safety of life and property and protection of property, stations in distress, amateur radio civil emergency service is covered in these sections of the FCC 97 section. ARES and RACES, Amateur Radio's 2 primary emergency response organization. ARES stands for Amateur Radio Emergency Services, and it is sponsored by the ARRL. The mission is to provide communications assistance to local and regional government and relief agencies. The St. Cloud Amateur Radio Club is an ARES organization. Okay, we are an ARES club, and we work with the city of St. Cloud and in Stearns County. And we will also be working with Benton County here in the near future. They will be our served agencies. So if they come up and they say, hey, we've got an emergency and we need help, they will call an emergency coordinator from the club, which is part of the ARIES system, and he will call members of the club and we'll get people there to help with radio communications. And as we talked about last week, it does happen. It has happened in the past. Okay, RACES is sponsored by FEMA. And you're off to the races. Its mission is to provide essential communication for state and local governments in a time of emergency. Okay? And only a licensed amateur may be the control operator of a RACES station. Okay? Okay, distressed calls. What happens if you're in a conversation, you're in a QSO conversation on the radio, and you hear somebody coming on and saying, I've got a problem, I'm in an emergency. What would you do?
Try to, he gives assistance and
Turn the dial.
and let him.
Okay. Turn the dial.
Turn it
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
No. No. And this is coming from our air traffic controller.
Yeah, that's what we do at work too.
So if I'm on an airplane, I don't want Kyla to be the air traffic controller for that plane, do I?
That'd be an emergency.
No, we don't turn the dial. Okay, but you know, Brian and I are having a great conversation. Okay, it's a fantastic conversation. I'm waiting for the punchline, and this distress call comes. Brian, give me that punchline. Then maybe we'll talk to this guy. Is that what we do? No. Coming from our firefighter, he's got the right answer.
Station calling, state your traffic.
Okay, exactly. Station calling, state your traffic. What's your emergency? We immediately break and we try to find out what's going on with this individual, where they're at, what the emergency is, and how we can help, right? It may be that we call Brian, okay? We call the fire department. We call 911. We become the relay for this individual that is needing help, right? So that's what we would do. So if you receive a call for help, immediately suspend your existing contact. Okay? Brian and I would immediately suspend what we're talking about. Okay? But we wouldn't go silent on the radio. Okay?
Keep in mind, only one of us may hear that distress call.
That's right. Only one of us may be in a position. See, Brian's down there in Florida and I'm up here. The guy calling for distress is Jim, and he's over here in Sartell. I can't hear Jim on HF, right? Because he's bouncing out over me. But Brian's hearing him. But Brian finds out where he's at. Okay. Good point. So we suspend our existing contact, and we immediately acknowledge the station calling for help. We immediately talk to them. Okay? They become our priority. We stand by to receive the location of the emergency and the name of the assistance required. Okay? We're here for you. What do you need? Give us that information. And then we relay that info to the proper authorities, and we stay on the frequency. Okay? We stay there. They might need something else, right? We stay there. We stay with them. Okay? We don't just say, okay, we made a phone call, see ya, and then we turn to VFO. No. We don't do that. We stay with them to make sure that they're taken care of. Okay? All right. Now, what happens if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, Montana? Okay? I have no cell coverage. And I'm walking through this path, and all of a sudden I get bit by a rattlesnake. Okay? I have no cell coverage. I'm stupid and there's nobody with me, but in my vehicle I have an HF rig. Okay? What do I do? What do I do? Any thoughts?
Suck out the poison.
Suck out the poison. Mayday, mayday. Okay, it's on the back side of my ankle. I can't put that up to my mouth to suck out the poison. Then I die, right? Then I die.
If you tried, we'd take pictures.
And send them CW?
Oh boy, I think we're losing it. Chris.
Go to the simplex frequency on that band and state your distress call.
Okay. Okay, so I go to the simplex if I was on VHF, UHF, right? And state my emergency. If I'm on HF, what do you think?
You can operate outside your privileges.
You can operate outside your privileges. You bet. You bet. Okay. Let's find out. Let's see what these guys tell me. Okay. On voice mode, say, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. What if it's in June?
June day.
June day. All right. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Kyle, what happens if you hear an airplane calling Mayday?
Get everyone on board and figure it out.
Okay. It gets your attention immediately, doesn't it?
I've actually never heard that though.
You've never heard that?
Good.
Good.
No, they'll call up and say we have an emergency.
Yeah. They're usually pretty calm and collective about it, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
We
Okay.
had a plane go down Saturday night and start on fire at a flying club.
Really? Wow.
They were flying in icing conditions in an airplane that is not authorized to. We're stupid.
Ah.
As a Dodger.
Okay. You the controller?
No, I was at home drinking beer.
Okay.
Enough said.
Very, very good.
No, they called 911 right away and they King Prairie went out there. They walked away.
They walked away?
The plane was on fire soon.
Belly in. Well, I'm glad they walked away. That's good. That's good. But if someone were to call Mayday, or if we were to call, hey, I have an emergency, somebody would, hopefully get right back to you. If you're on CW or digital, send SOS, 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 followed by any station, come in please. Okay, any station, come in please. We're looking for anybody. We got an emergency. Anybody, talk to me. I'm dying here of a snake bite. Help me. Okay, so identify the transmission with your call. Put your call sign out there. Okay, you put your call sign out there, they're going to be able to hopefully look you up on QRZ or somewhere and see who you are. Right? It helps. State your location and the nature of the situation. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and I've been bitten by a rattlesnake. Send help, and please hurry. Okay, but give them your location the best that you can. If you can give them GPS coordinates, even the better.
Let your wife know where your life insurance policy is.
Yeah, let your wife know where the life insurance policy is. You betcha.
Sure, you cast it on you.
She's probably going to stick the snakes
You
on
think
me.
through the snake at him.
Yeah. Well, I've often told Penny, I says, if I'm ever out there shoveling snow and I die of a heart attack, just pull the van out and run over me, because it doubles life insurance if it's an accident. She keeps telling me that it doesn't do any good if she's in jail for murder, so.
Well, if you wait long enough, the plow will hit you.
That would classify as
Not on our street. All right, very good. State your location, the nature of the situation, and describe the type of assistance that is required. Okay. And this one, I know somebody brought this up. Section 97.405 of FCC 47 CFR allows the distress station to use any means of communications available, even frequencies, mode, or power level outside of your normal privileges. If you are in an emergency situation and you need to get emergency help, you can go outside of your band, okay? Outside of your privileges. As a general, you can use anywhere, anything. Use the best mode and the best frequency that's going to get you the help, okay? Now make sure that it is an emergency, okay? You definitely want to make sure it's an emergency. Now, I tripped and I banged up my elbow. It's not that big of an emergency, okay? It's not going to kill me. I'm not in a position that that's going to kill me. But being bit by a rattlesnake, yeah, maybe, okay? So, but you can go outside of your band and outside of your privileges in a case of just needing to make a distress call. Okay, practice questions. I think we're getting close here. What is the first thing you should do if you are communicating with another amateur station and hear a station in distress break in? And I like some of these answers. They're almost as good as the ones you came up with. Not quite though, almost. Continue your communication because you were first on the frequency. Okay. Change to a different frequency. Acknowledge the station in distress and determine what assistance may be needed.
Common sense.
That's common sense. And immediately cease all transmissions. Oh, there's an emergency, so I better be quiet. Okay. That doesn't do any good, right? The answer is B. There we go, Bravo. You got it. All right, who may be the control operator of an amateur station transmitting in RACES to assist relief operations during a disaster? Only a person holding an FCC-issued amateur operator license. Only a RACES net control operator. A person holding an FCC-issued amateur radio license or an appropriate government official.
Are there any?
Ooh. Are there any? That's a good question. Any control operator when normal communication systems are operational.
The A alpha.
Okay, I'm hearing A and C.
I would say A, because you didn't talk about government official.
Okay. The answer is A. Okay. You do have to be a licensed amateur operator holding a license in order to be the control operator of an amateur station. Okay. So an appropriate government official, you could have lots of government officials, right, that don't know how to operate radios.
Mm-hmm.
If they do know how to operate radios, hopefully they have a license. And then they would be in a position that they could do that. Okay, when an amateur station when is an amateur station allowed to use any means at its disposal to assist another station in distress? Only when transmitting in RACES, at any time when transmitting in an organized event, at any time during an actual emergency.
C.
Okay. C. Only on authorized HF frequencies. Okay. All right. You can eliminate some of these answers fairly quickly. Okay. C is the correct answer. At any time during an actual emergency. What frequency should be used to send a distress call? Only frequencies authorized for RACES or ARRI stations, only frequencies that are within your operating privileges, and only frequencies used by police, fire, or emergency medical services. A. Okay. Whichever frequency has the best chance of communicating the distress message. Okay. You may have to turn the dial a little bit to see which one might be your best chance. You know, where are you hearing things, right? You want to go where you're hearing something. You don't want to get on a frequency that is crickets, okay? That you're not hearing anything, because your chance of getting somebody to come back are much less than on a frequency where you're hearing things happen. Answer is A. And this is the end of Module 2.